to the Super Memory for Schools program. My name is KHauI. I am very happy to teach you Physics 7. In Grade 7, we will learn the content of 3 chapters of Physics 7. Chapter 1, Optics. Chapter 2, Acoustics. Chapter 3, Electronics. We'll start with the first article in Chapter 1 today. That is, getting to know the light, luminous objects, and non-luminous objects. In this lesson, you will learn the following parts. The first part is when our eyes see light. The second part is when our eyes see an object. And the third and fourth parts are the definition of luminous objects and non-luminous objects. Let's get started with your lesson. We begin with the first topic, getting to know light. Please answer these following questions. Let me know when our eyes see light in the following cases based on observations in everyday life. Case 1. At night, staying in a room with closed wooden doors, opening eyes without turning on lights. In this case, because the lights in the room are not turned on, there is no light entering our eyes, so our eyes will not see light. Case 2. Staying in the room at night, turning on the light, and keeping your eyes open. What about this case? As you can see, the lights in the room have been turned on. There is light entering our eyes, so our eyes will see light in this case. Case 3. Opening your eyes during daytime when being outdoors. In this case, you can see that light can be transmitted to our eyes, so our eyes see light. Case 4. Opening your eyes during the day and covering them with your hands. So what do you think in this situation? You can see that there is light transmitted to our eyes in this case. However, we covered the eyes with our hands, preventing the light from reaching our eyes. So we can see that our eyes see light in the 2 cases. What do you think they have in common? In these 2 cases, what do you see that is similar? Our eyes see light when it is transmitted to our eyes, so in what circumstances can our eyes see an object? Our eyes see light when it is transmitted to our eyes, so in what circumstances can our eyes see an object? We move to the next topic, seeing an object. Please look at the image below and answer my question. At night, while in a closed room, in which of the following cases do we see objects? A. Lights out. B. Lights on. In case A, when the lights are off, can we see objects in the room? In this case, you see that our eyes will not see any objects in the room, because there is no light from these objects transmitted to my eyes. How about case B? Case B, when the lights are turned on. The objects in the room reflect the light, which is transmitted to our eyes. So, our eyes see the objects in the room. Let me remind you that the light from objects must be transmitted to your eyes. Only then you will be able to see the objects in the room. If the light from the objects does not reach our eyes, then even if the lights are on, we cannot see them. For example, if I'm standing with my back turned to the board, can I see the board? I won't see the board. Tell me why. Because the light from the board isn't transmitted to our eyes. With that being said, we can come to the conclusion. We see an object when the light from the object is transmitted to our eyes. And as you can see in the question above, when the lights are turned on, we can see the light bulbs and the objects in the room because light from these objects is transmitted to our eyes. So, what's the distinction between the light bulb and the other objects in the room? Let's find out in the following content. Luminous objects and non-luminous objects. Now we will observe the previous example and answer my question. We can see objects in a closed room when the lights in the room are on. Which objects in the room emit their own light, which reflect the light emitted by other objects? In this question, what you see is the object that emits light on its own is the filament of the light bulb when an electric current flows through it, and the object that reflects the light from the light bulb to its table, the chair, and the floor And do you know, objects that reflect light from a light bulb are called non-luminescent objects? As for objects that emit light on their own, we call them luminous objects. So in your opinion, what is the difference between luminous objects and non-luminous objects? As you can see, luminous objects are objects that can generate light on their own. Non-luminous objects are not capable of emitting light on their own, but they require light to come to them and reflect light. In the concept of bright objects, you have to take note that the bright objects include both luminous objects and non-luminous objects. From the above comment, we have the definition of luminous objects and non-luminous objects as the following. Luminous objects are objects that can generate light on their own. Bright objects include luminous objects and non-luminous objects. So, when you observe objects in everyday life, do you know what luminous objects and non-luminous objects are? To answer that question, we will have some examples. Let's look at the images here, which are luminous objects and non-luminous objects. Look at the first image. This is the image of fire. So do you think that the fire is a luminous object or a non-luminous object? Well, you see that fire is able to generate light on its own. So the fire will be a luminous object. You observe the next images. Here you see that we are observing incandescent light bulbs and compact fluorescent lamps. So in these two bulbs, which one is the light source and which is the bright object? If you can see an incandescent lamp, it will be a luminous object, and a compact light will be a non-luminous object. Because compact lamps do not emit light on their own, but reflect light from a luminous object, which is an incandescent lamp. We will observe the next image. In this image, you will see the sun. Do you think the sun is a luminous object or a non-luminous object? The sun is a luminous object. What about the moon? When I ask this question, I think most of your answers say the moon is a luminous object. But actually the moon is not. The moon is just a non-luminous object. Tell me why. The moon does not emit light on its own, but reflects back the light from the sun. So the moon is only a non-luminous object. We will observe the following image. In this image, you can see the black glasses. On the other hand, we can also see the black headphones and the black things. I call them our black objects. And do you know that the black objects are those that do not emit light and do not receive and reflect the light from another object? And we have the question, how can we realize the black object? We can recognize black objects because we see the things around the black object. For example, why do we see the black glasses? Because we saw the white background beneath these black eyeglasses. And that case is the same. Why do we see the black headphones? Because we see the book, the tray, the keyboard, and the table. So we recognize the black headphones. We just learned about a few examples to know what luminous and non-luminous objects are. Now we will move to the application section to do some of the following exercises. Lesson 1. We recognize the light when A. It's daytime. B. There is a light source placed before our eyes. C. We're opening our eyes. And D. The light transmission to our eyes. To answer this question, you need to remember the previous knowledge. As light passes into our eyes, it is our eyes that recognize it. So in this question, the correct answer is D. We will move to exercise 2. You see the red book because A. The book is red. B. Because the book is a light source. C. Because the book is a luminous object. And D. For there is a red light transmitted from the book to my eyes. To answer this question, they will remember the previous knowledge. The reason is our eyes see an object when the light is transmitted from the object to our eyes. In this case, why can our eyes see that book is red? Because the red light from the book is transmitted to our eyes. So, in this question, the correct answer is D. Exercise 3. Which of the following objects is a luminous object? A. The sun. B. Pieces of white paper placed in the sun. C. Pieces of black paper placed in the sun, and D. The moon. In this question, you see that the right answer is A. Let's move to exercise 4. In any of the following cases, our eyes do not recognize the pieces of black cover. A. Stick the pieces of black cover on the green paper and put it in front of the light. B. Stick the pieces of black cover on the white paper and put it in a dark room. C. Put the pieces of black cover on the table in front of a burning candle. And D. Put the pieces of black cover under the sun. To answer this question, you need to remember the previous knowledge. It is, we recognize black objects because we see light objects around black objects. Now we will apply this knowledge to find the answer. Let's analyze each answer. Answer A, you see, stick the pieces of black cover on the green paper and then put it in front of the electric light. In this case, what do you see? Our eyes can see the green of paper, so we will recognize the pieces of black cover. What about answer B? Stick the pieces of black cover on the white paper, but now we put it in a dark room. So in this case, we can see the white paper or not. Our eyes can see the green of paper, so we will recognize the pieces of black cover. How about with answer C? Put the pieces of black cover on the table in front of a burning candle. In this case, you can see that we also see the table, so we will also recognize the pieces of black cover. And how about answer D? Put the pieces of black cover under the sun. In this case, you will also recognize the black cover, because we see the objects around the pieces of black cover. In this question, we can immediately answer that is answer B. Exercise 5. In a classroom, the teacher is standing with her back to the board, and students look at the board. Please answer the following questions. Question A. Is the board a luminous object or a luminous object? You can immediately answer. The board is a non-luminous object because the board can't generate light on its own because it receives the light from the sun and reflects. Question B. Do students see the board? Why? The student is looking at the board, so at this time there is light from the board transmitted to the student's eyes. So in this case, the student will see the board. Question C. Do teachers see the board? Why? What do you see after observing? The teacher is standing with her back to the board, so at this time the light from the board isn't transmitted to the teacher's eyes. The teacher will not see the board. Now, I will remind the class of the content of today's lesson through the mind map. In the lesson, Getting to Know Light, Luminous Objects, and Non-Luminous Objects, you need to know clearly the following contents. The first part is recognizing the light. In this part, you need to remember. Our eyes recognize the light when the light is transmitted to them. The second part is seeing an object. In this part, you need to remember that your eyes see an object when the light from that object is transmitted to your eyes. And the third part is the definition of a luminous object. You need to remember that luminous objects are objects capable of emitting light on their own, for example, the sun, light bulbs, flame. And the last concept that you need to remember is the definition of bright objects. You need to remember that the light objects include a luminous object and a non-luminous object. That's all for today. Thanks for following the lesson. I hope that you will have useful knowledge. See you in the next Super Memory for Schools program. Goodbye.